I found myself having 1-hour meetings with investors. And 50 minutes of that time would be me trying to convince them that innovation was even needed. These attitudes like, well, Victoria's Secret's kind of got that down, don't they? And so what I did was I gave investors homework. I said, before we meet, I need you to talk to at least 5 women, but I want you to ask them these questions. How do you feel about bra shopping? How do you feel about your bra at 6 p.m. on a Thursday? How many bras do you own? And how many do you wear? And we all know the answers. I hate bra shopping. At 6 p.m. on a Thursday, I'm tearing that bra off. I have 10 to 20 bras and I wear one of them, the ugly, comfy one, right?
Yeah.
And so Alfred Lin from Sequoia, I was very honored to meet with him. And he actually came in with a whole spreadsheet of responses. And he was already with me. He was like, okay, women are all having the same experience and it's a pretty bad experience. Let's talk. So remember that you can frame things. And I found that if an investor wasn't willing to do that, they probably weren't really interested in the conversation.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today on Her Money. I'm Jean Chatzky, and I'm wondering, what was your most recent big idea, your most recent brainstorm? Have you ever invented anything or patented anything? According to the World Economic Forum, just 10.9% of all patents in the U.S. are granted to women. That number is climbing slowly, but you know us here at Her Money, we're impatient. These things do not happen quickly enough. There is this enormous gender gap when it comes to who gets credit and who gets compensated for all manner of ideas and inventions. My guest today, Bree McKeen, she knows a thing or two about that and about patents. She's got 6 of them. Bree is the founder of lingerie brand Evelyn and Bobbie because she had a dream for a better bra. She struggled for years with aching shoulders, tension, headaches, and posture issues from wearing an underwire bra, and she was disappointed with the alternative bra options on the market, so she created her own solution. Today, we're going to hear about how she did it and what the landscape is like for other women with inventions of their own. Bree, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jean. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So the landscape that you entered is a vast one. The lingerie and underwear industry is a $13 billion market. And yet it has long been dominated by men. Yes. Why is that? And how's it changing?
So I studied anthropology in my undergrad, and it took me several years to come up with what I consider to be the metaphor of the status quo in intimates. And in part why I think it was dominated by men for so long. And I call it the woman as cupcake metaphor. To be decorated and consumed. And I think for a very long time, intimates were about how it made you look, how sexy it made you. And, there was a moment in time where a woman owning her own sexuality was very much a feminist ideal, but it wasn't focused on the engineering, and I do mean engineering, of the product. And that is really why I created my company, because I wanted to create products that worked with our bodies, not against them. And that really started, like you introduced, from my personal experience. I was working in venture capital, getting pitched ideas all day long. And I think I kind of had a series of aha moments that we live in a world where we have artificial intelligence, but I didn't have a basic bra that I could wear for 12 hours, look good in my clothes, present myself professionally, and not want to tear it off at the end of the day.
And yet the bra market itself, I can't tell you how many new and different bras I've tried in the last just a few years, right?
Really
I mean,
interesting.
Third Love, Honey Love, they're all love something or another. I mean, which is all just a way of saying, look, the bra market it's pretty saturated at this point. There are a lot of options, but you still saw this gap out there.
Yes.
What was it that all of these people had not invented?
So this comes back to intellectual property. And as a woman who had sat on the investor side of the table, I was very focused on building a patent portfolio from the very beginning because I knew, as you know well, Jean, as a woman-led company and a female-focused product, I knew that I would need that intellectual property to get the funding that I needed. The intellectual property that I was focused on was a replacement for the underwire. Many people don't realize that the underwire was patented in 1931. It's still in 90% of bras in the market. Almost 100 years of this technology that was very novel in 1931, but putting a flat piece of steel around each breast in 2025, I would argue, is an old idea. And so I had experienced a lot of wire-free bras that take the wire out. Well, the average bra size in this country, if you just look at it as an anthropologist, as a public health perspective, the average bra size in this country is a 34F. I'm a 34G. So that is a significant amount of breast tissue that we are carrying around every day. And just taking the wire out of the bra, for me, creates kind of one lump in the middle. I don't have a defined silhouette. I don't have nice lift and separation. You take the wire out, you take the support out.
Right.
And I said, I don't want to take the support out. I want to replace the support with something better. And that's what I focused on. And we were 3D printing things, Jean, hundreds of 3D printed prototypes. I don't think anybody cares, but I did create the world's first completely 3D printed bra out of multiple materials. And it was really getting to that question of what is the next evolution of that structure? And the answer is the EB core. And that's what my patents are around. And it's a 3D sling that, together with the long line snug band, creates a shelf. And that's why we're able to support up to a K cup with no wire. I mean, the product really feels like a second skin. And, it may look like other things on the market, but when you wear it, you can understand that it's different.
It does feel different. It feels a lot different than a sports bra, and it feels different than the non-wire bras. You were a managing partner at a Silicon Valley investment firm. I imagine you were making really good money. What made you decide to take a leap?
I had an incredible job. I had been given an incredible opportunity by an incredible person who was new to venture capital and it was a wealthy private equity investor who had set aside some of his private capital to do VC. And I was given a front row seat. I mean, we worked together to develop the investment criteria and the due diligence process. And so in many ways, it was a dream job. But the part of that I loved, Jean, was the building. And I think at some point I realized that, part of an investor's job is to get to know as quickly as possible so they can move on to the ones that warrant due diligence, right? And I, at some point, realized that I was on the wrong side of the table because what was interesting to me was solving the problems and digging into, okay, but how are you going to do that? And what would really make it different? And so at the same time, I'm having this amazing experience working in finance. I was also having a terrible experience wearing a bra. And I had kind of a big aha moment in my doctor's office, actually. I was working with this man, Dr. Callister, who was a physiologist. And, I cared as a 28-year-old young woman in a very male-dominated, in the heart of Silicon Valley. We were, in downtown San Francisco. I cared very much about carrying myself with authority and poise. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm slouching because I don't have enough core strength. And I spent about 6 months doing really focused, I did bar method and really got my core strength up. And I was standing in this physiologist's office and he said, Bree, you have arrived to your best posture. Congratulations. And I just kind of blurted out, I said, yeah, but when I stand like this, I have these 2 pressure points from my underwire. And he explained, he said, that's a neuromuscular feedback loop. I'm so glad you told me that. He said, if your bra hurts when you stand up straight, you're going to slouch. And he related it to a pebble in your shoe. So, if you get a pebble in your shoe, you don't have to tell your brain to curl around it. Your foot just curls right around it instantly. He said, that's how our bodies work. And so for me, every time I stood up straight, I had these 2 pressure points from the, 10 to 15 pounds of breast tissue, depending on the variation of my weight and menstrual cycle, pushing down into that. And it was affecting my posture. And, it really does make a difference to have something that is intelligently designed with your body and the population demographics in mind. I have 270 fit models, real women.
Who are giving you feedback all the time. And yet it doesn't always work, right? I know you created a strapless bra before Evelyn and Bobbie that did not take off.
Oh, it almost killed me. That was just devastating.
Tell us about that experience because there is a need for a good strapless. The strapless that I own is literally 15 years old because every time I try to replace it, I can't because it's the only one that has ever worked for me. What happened in this experience and what made you try again?
I'm really grateful for that failure. I know that people say that. I mean it. The prototypes that we developed. So first of all, I took something that a big company, an established brand would have taken at a minimum 48 months. And I wasn't a designer. And so I think the first mistake was that I had wildly unrealistic expectations for how long it takes to create a brand new first of kind product in the world today. So where that product went wrong was from the translation of prototype to what was actually possible in mass production. And my development timeline was wildly unrealistic based on the newness of that product. And so what happened was when we went, and trust me, I work with the most incredible, most innovative factories in the world. I could not have better partners. But to create something on a 3D printer and then translate that to mass production, that's a vast gap. And the product just ended up being a lot heavier and bulkier than it needs to be to really achieve the wear experience that you need. It had a proprietary fit algorithm. It was like so future forward. But ultimately, it was so complex that it made it very difficult. So first, the product was a little bit it was bulky. And secondly, the purchase path was so complex. It was too much for the consumer. And what that taught me, Jean, which was the most important lesson, was that simplicity is everything. And it's especially everything for bras because, and I know you know this feeling, you said you've tried so many bras. I call it disappointment fatigue. Mm-hmm. You get this great Instagram ad and, oh, it's going to change your life. And then you try it and you're like, it's just literally like everything else, or it does less than what I've tried before. And so I think women have this, what's called disappointment fatigue. That's what we've kind of branded it internally. And so we're always looking for like, how do we get her past her disappointment fatigue? But yes, there were so many mistakes, but that's what it taught me. And I'm so grateful for that because our bras are so easy. We fit over 100 sizes in 7 sizes. So, you told me your bra size, you're just a small.
Right. It's really interesting, which sort of brings us back to this history of bra patents, right?
Yeah.
The last time that I spoke with a designer in your industry who created patents, actually, she wrote her own patents because she didn't have lawyers to afford patents. It was Sarah Blakely at the beginning of Spanx.
Yes. I did my own patent drawings because paying the drafter was too expensive. But
Yeah.
yes, I did have a lawyer.
But there haven't
Yeah.
been that many changes to bra patents since the 1930s. So what is it about this one in particular that made you need to receive a new patent, right? I mean, why didn't the Third Love people, when they started with the half sizes, trust me, I've tried everything, why wasn't patenting a necessity there?
This will blow your mind. This may blow your mind. When I applied for my first patent, it was way back in 2013. I got my first patent within a year. I was expecting a 2 to 5 year battle with the patent office. I got the first patent within a year, and the US Patent Office had me defend against only one patent. It was a patent from 1965 that had articulating metal parts. I call it the shark tooth bra. It had articulating metal. It never made it to market. It was patented by a man. That was the only patent they asked me to defend against.
We've never talked about the process of
Oh,
applying
sure.
for patents on
Yeah.
this show. Like, what do you do? And how long, why does it take 3 to 5 years?
There's two types of patents: design patents and utility patents. A design patent says, this is a unique design. It looks special, and we've never had something that looks just like this before. And the Burberry plaid is a great example. You can't copy the Burberry plaid, or I don't know if they still have a design patent on that. You can't patent, or you can't have a product that looks just like that. They will pull it in customs if they have a design patent. So it protects the way something looks. I have utility patents. That's what you have on your iPhone. So if Apple comes up with a new innovation, and this is, why they're so careful to protect their intellectual property. It's the first time that something has worked that way. So utility patents protect the way something works. They can go get a utility patent on that. Now, design patents, easy to get. Utility patents, hard to get. If you change the design on a design patent only 30%, it's fine. It's pretty subjective. Design patents give you limited protection. Utility patents give you a lot of protection. It says you can't have something that works exactly like this, or it's an infringement on your patent. And so as you're going through that process, the job of the US Patent Office is to go through all of the existing patents and to reference known prior art, so things that are already in the market, and say, is this truly novel, or has something that works like this already existed in the world? And what the Patent Office found was that there's nothing like the EB sling. Sometimes I have this thought where I'm like, gosh, it seems so obvious, right? Take out the hard part and take that important zone of support and separation and replace it with something soft, right? In our case, we've used bonded layers of really supportive bonding, and that's what creates that beautiful lifted silhouette. The patent office has to give you things that they think might have similar features. The only one they gave me is this patent from 1965. So what I took away from that is that the underwire has been used so ubiquitously, right? It's still in 90% of bras. There hasn't been a ton of innovation in bras. People have been doing different versions of the same thing for almost 100 years. And look at the evolution of other essential products in your life, right? Look at the telephone. Can you imagine using a 100-year-old telephone?
Or just look at the iPhone, right? I mean, you brought up
Yeah.
the iPhone. Look at how many different iterations of the iPhone there's been. They seem to come up with one every single year, and I'm sure every single year they have a new round of patents. I'm wondering, for people who have an idea or think that they would like to start a business, if trying to come up with something that is truly new and different is something to aim for, or
Yes.
whether you need the idea, and then if you get something that's truly new and different, you're just lucky. We're talking about having patent protection for your invention, and whether, if you want to start a business, if you want to make something, if that's a bar you should be aiming for. I mean, what do you think?
I am a big fan of intellectual property. So a couple of thoughts for those out there with an idea. The last several years, the amount of venture capital going to female-founded companies has hovered right around 2%, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of male investors, and we can understand people invest in what they know. If they don't wear bras, or if you have another idea for a women's product, you have to be prepared to make your case for the value of that, or find female investors, but statistically, there are fewer. And so for me, having intellectual property, I believe, will help you get funding because it's something very concrete. My investor did enormous due diligence. He had a binder this thick of the due diligence that he did on my patents. And they came back and said, wow, this is a really good patent. It's very strong. It's defensible. We believe we're investing in something. So that's the first reason why I say yes. Number two, copycatting has never been more prolific than today. Not only can they copy your product, but I've seen examples where they are taking people's marketing and putting, where a founder has a YouTube video selling her product and they're putting a different AI face on there. So piracy and copycatting has never been easier. And it's helpful to be able to say, hey, this product is patented, and to be able to go to Amazon and say, hey, this is a patented product. You got to take that down. So I do think it actually just helps you protect your market share. Those are the two main reasons why I think it's worth it.
You came out of the VC world in order to start your business. What advice do you have for women, patentable or not, who are trying to pitch their ideas and get taken seriously and get some of that 2% of venture capital, or even bump the number to the 3%, God forbid?
Let me sit up in my chair, because this is something that I feel very passionately about. Number one, you don't owe anyone any information about your company. I am giving you permission right now to hold your cards close to your chest. What I see women doing is going into these meetings with investors, and they will ask you every question under the sun. You do not have to answer anything. And what you should be doing is interviewing them and telling them nothing unless you really think they are a good partner for you. And there's some ways that you can pre-vet them, but tell them enough to gauge their interest. And you can say, well, I'm not sharing that. Of course, if we decide that this could be a good fit and we enter into due diligence together, of course, I'll tell you all of that. But for now, here's what I'd like to know about you. So number one, remember, it's a two-way interview. They will ask you everything, and you do not have to tell them. So many times you'll be in a conversation with an investor who has no interest in investing in you, but they're looking at another company next door, and they're doing due diligence on that investment, and they want to learn about what you're doing. Remember that, and give them information very intentionally. And it's like dating, go slow. It's okay. Yeah. Go slow. It's a very important relationship. And then the other thing is, don't let investors waste your time. This was a lesson that was hard for me to learn. And fundraising is so intense. It takes so much time and heart and energy. And if you're doing it well, you're customizing your pitch for every investor. And, that alone is a full-time job. And so I found myself having 1-hour meetings with investors. And 50 minutes of that time would be me trying to convince them that women cared about comfort at all, that innovation was even needed. These attitudes like, well, Victoria's Secret's kind of got that down, don't they? I mean, this was many years ago. I think people have a different idea now. And we've seen really cool entrants like Skims and NYX. And, this industry is very much in disruption. So I think it would be a different conversation now for my particular industry. But I had so many of those conversations that were just not getting to the meat. And so what I did was I gave investors homework. I said, before we meet, I need you to talk to at least 5 women, or you can have one of your associates do it, but I want you to ask them these questions. How do you feel about bra shopping? How do you feel about your bra at 6 p.m. on a Thursday? How many bras do you own? And how many do you wear? And we all know the answers. I hate bra shopping. At 6 p.m. on a Thursday, I'm tearing that bra off. I have 10 to 20 bras, and I wear one of them, the ugly, comfy one, right?
Yeah.
And so Alfred Lin from Sequoia, I was very honored to meet with him, and he actually came in with a whole spreadsheet of responses. And he was already with me. He was like, okay, women are all having the same experience, and it's a pretty bad experience. Let's talk. And so remember that you can frame things. And I found that if an investor wasn't willing to do that, they probably weren't really interested in the conversation.
I'm curious that you said you ended up with a male funder. Were you surprised by that?
This investor is the best partner I could have ever wished for. But, it was really interesting because his aha moment, and I think part of this is luck, right? I call it magic. But he had just been, I was talking about the ergonomics in my pitch, and he had just been to a black tie event where he had worn a tux with suspenders for like 10 hours. It was a super long event, or I don't know how long it was. And he said, I just wore these suspenders, and by the end of the night, my neck and shoulders were aching. Is it like that? And I said, it's like that every day.
Yep.
And he said, well, that's awful. I mean, that has to change, And so I also think this particular person is an exceptional human being, in many ways. But he had a relatable experience. If it's a women's product, it's a male investor. You do have to think creatively of how to make it an understandable experience for them.
I should have asked this question at the very top of the interview, and I just didn't. Evelyn and Bobbie, where did it come from?
So I wanted my brand to be grounded in real women. And I love the idea of intergenerational connectedness. So Evelyn was my maternal grandmother. And she actually modeled lingerie in the 30s and was a kind of a bold woman. She was a model and a starlet. So she represents beauty. And then my Aunt Bobbie, my great aunt, taught me how to sew as a girl and was drilled into me the importance of detail. Like, you were not allowed to have a loose thread anywhere. And she taught me how to pull the front side thread to the back and make it perfectly neat. And, she would say, honey, it is the details of a garment that make it a fine garment. And I learned a lot from her that I've applied here. But Aunt Bobbie was also an entrepreneur. She represents purpose. So the brand is beauty and purpose, and those two women are symbols of that for me.
I love that. I also love that this interview made me think of my Aunt Ida, who's not really my Aunt Ida, but my brother-in-law.
She's everybody's Aunt Ida.
She truly was. My brother-in-law, Frank, had an Aunt Ida who was like his second mother. She basically helped raise him. And she was the bra saleswoman in Boston.
Wow.
The Boston Globe wrote an article about her. I mean, she was just legendary. She hated that article. It was totally mortifying, I think, to her. But
really?
She was, yes, at a time when people hated bra shopping, they actually liked going to Ida. So as we wrap this up, I have 2 assignments for you.
Oh.
The first is a front hook bra. I love a front hook bra, and it's been years since Chantel stopped making theirs that I have been able to find a decent one. And second, and I'm sure you're doing this already, swimwear, please.
On it. I just tried on the prototypes, and they're gorgeous. Yes.
Bree McKeen, thank you so much. Where can people find more about you and about the company?
You can buy a bra right now at evelynbobbie.com, but we are also in Nordstrom, Von Maur, in many retail locations and boutiques across the U.S. So we're showing up everywhere, but evelynbobbie.com is the best place to shop today.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jean.